The Battle of Love, Religions, Homosexuality, and Hidden Secrets of Faith. The Bible's taboo, the hidden truth behind the condemnation of homosexuality. Have you ever wondered why homosexuality, the love shared between two people of the same sex, has become one of the greatest taboos in religion? Why does the Bible, a book that speaks of love, forgiveness, and mercy, seem to condemn so harshly a way of loving that so many people feel deep within their souls? This question is more than just theological. It is a sacred mystery. Institutional religion has often avoided exploring this contradiction because it leads us to a disturbing reality. What the heart feels is branded as sin, and condemnation becomes the norm. And so, our journey as seekers of sacred mysteries begins with one of the most painful questions in the Bible: its condemnation of homosexuality. The Bible, the foundation of Christian faith, is often quoted as the authority on this matter. In passages such as those found in Leviticus, homosexuality is described as an abomination, a violation of divine law. This narrative has shaped the moral imagination of billions, setting rules, hierarchies, and a model of what is considered the correct way to live. It offers followers a handbook of morality. But for those who dare to look deeper, the question becomes much larger. What is the Bible really hiding about human sexuality? For a historian of sacred mysteries, this question is crucial. The idea that only heterosexual love was divinely ordained doesn't seem sufficient to explain the vast diversity of humanity, a diversity that the Bible itself acknowledges. What if the story of Adam and Eve wasn't the only story of creation? What if other beings, for other purposes, were also created? Limiting creation to a single couple restricts our understanding of reality and blinds us to the true depth of the mystery. This is where deconstruction begins. The Bible's rigid framework on sexuality may not be about divine law alone, but about control, order, and the shaping of societies. By labeling one kind of love as holy and another as sinful, religion imposes limits that may not come from God Himself, but from human interpretation. Now, let's pause for a moment with the practical action. Close your eyes and think about your deepest desire. Is it healing, prosperity, knowledge? The Bible teaches us to pray for these things. But what if there was another way? What if something forbidden like magic could bring them to you? Religion teaches us to fear magic, calling it dangerous and evil. Yet this fear has shaped our faith as much as our prayers have. Imagine for a moment what your faith would look like if the fear of magic didn't exist. Would your relationship with God be freer, or even more powerful? This brings us to another hidden question. If good and evil are two sides of the same coin, what does the Bible really say about the origin of demons? To answer this, we must step beyond the Bible itself. The Book of Enoch, once revered as sacred, but later banned from the biblical canon, offers a radical vision of fallen angels and their forbidden knowledge. And in the ancient Persian faith of Zoroastrianism, one of the world's oldest religions, we see a cosmic battle between light and darkness, good and evil, that reshapes how we view human desire. As we move forward, our investigation will take us into these mysteries, into the secrets of Enoch and the story of the fallen angels that the Bible chose to hide. If this idea of a spiritual war resonates with you, comment saying, "Heavenly War, so I'll know you ray on this journey with me." Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Faith Prayer so you don't miss the next chapter. Because this is only the beginning. Sodom and Mercy, what the Qur'an really teaches about homosexuality. In the first chapter of our journey, we explored how the Bible frames homosexuality as a divine taboo, with verses that have been used for centuries to justify condemnation. But is the story really that simple? Could there be more layers to this sacred mystery? Now, let us turn to another holy book that shares many of the same origins as Genesis, the Qur'an. For over 1.8 billion people, the Qur'an is the ultimate source of divine wisdom, and its voice on sexuality, especially homosexuality, has shaped Islamic civilization for more than 1,400 years. But does it condemn same-sex love in the same way the Bible does? The answer may surprise you. The Qur'an does not remain silent on this subject. It references the story of the prophet Lot, known in the Bible as Abraham's nephew, who lived in the infamous city of Sodom. The men of Sodom are described as committing shameful acts, and the city is ultimately destroyed by divine judgment. At first glance, the story seems identical to the one in the Bible. But here's where the interpretation shifts. For many Islamic scholars, the destruction of Sodom was not solely about homosexuality. Instead, it was about acts of violence, exploitation, rape, and the complete breakdown of hospitality and compassion within the city. In this reading, the sin of Sodom was not love between two people of the same sex, it was abuse, corruption, and cruelty. This interpretation changes everything. While most schools of Islamic thought traditionally condemn same-sex intimacy, there is a growing minority of theologians who argue that the Qur'an never condemned consensual love between two people. Instead, it condemned acts of aggression and violation. In this view, homosexuality is not automatically sinful, it is the violence and exploitation that are judged by God. Let's pause for a practical reflection. Think of a time when you judged someone. Maybe it was because of the way they dressed, the life choices they made, or the way they loved. Now take a moment to feel the difference between judgment and compassion. The Qur'an repeatedly reminds us that Allah is merciful, that mercy is not weakness, but the essence of what makes us human and what brings us closer to the divine. This shift from condemnation to compassion opens a door. If the Bible's narrative imposes rules and punishment, the Qur'an offers us the possibility of mercy, even when human communities fail. For Muslims who wrestle with questions of identity and faith, this perspective can be liberating. It challenges the weight of shame and reorients the conversation toward understanding and empathy. But let's take this reflection even further. What about religions that do not define God as a judge or a punisher at all? What about faiths where tolerance is not just a virtue, but the very foundation of spirituality? In the next chapter, we will explore exactly that. We'll journey into the wisdom of paganism and Buddhism, two ancient traditions that approach love and sexuality not as taboos to be condemned, but as sacred expressions of human existence. Where the Bible and the Qur'an draw lines of law and morality, paganism and Buddhism invite us to see love as divine energy, beyond rules, beyond fear, beyond shame. If the idea that mercy makes us more human resonates with you, leave a comment saying mercy so I'll know you're still walking with me on this journey. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Faith Prayer so you won't miss the next chapter, where we explore how ancient wisdom traditions celebrated love without boundaries. Because sometimes the answers to the deepest mysteries of faith are not found in condemnation, but in compassion. Love beyond gender: how paganism and Buddhism celebrate sexuality. In our last chapter, we explored how the Qur'an tells the story of Sodom and how many scholars believe its focus is not on condemning homosexuality itself, but on condemning violence, exploitation, and the absence of mercy. That perspective opened a new way of seeing human sexuality through the lens of compassion. But what if love didn't need permission at all? What if sexuality was not a sin to be hidden, but a sacred force to be embraced? To answer that, we must look toward the world's most ancient religions and Eastern philosophies, where tolerance is not just a moral choice, but the essence of spirituality itself. Let's begin with paganism. In the ancient world, pagan traditions saw sexuality as a natural and divine expression of life. Far from being taboo, homosexuality was often embraced as part of the sacred cycle of love and desire. Greek and Roman mythology, for instance, is filled with stories of gods and heroes who loved both men and women without shame, without judgment. Think of Apollo, the god of music and healing, who loved both mortal women and young men. Think of Dionysus, the god of ecstasy and transformation, who defied every convention of gender and sexuality. Even Hercules, the great hero, was celebrated in myths that included same-sex love. In paganism, sexuality was not a threat to holiness, but a gateway into it. Love, whether between man and woman, or between two men or two women, was seen as divine energy, a sacred force of creation. In this worldview, tolerance is not just an optional virtue, it is the very heart of faith. To celebrate diversity was to honor the gods themselves, Pagan spirituality did not separate body and soul, but saw them as one unified expression of the divine. And that perspective is radically freeing, especially compared to the weight of guilt and shame that often comes with the Abrahamic traditions. Now, let's shift eastward to Buddhism. Unlike Christianity or Islam, Buddhism does not focus on divine commandments or rigid moral codes about sexuality. Instead, it focuses on the human heart and its journey toward liberation from suffering. For Buddhism, sexuality in itself is neither sinful nor holy, it is simply part of life. What matters is not who you love, but the intention behind your love. Is it driven by compassion or by selfish desire? Does it bring peace or does it create suffering? The Buddhist path emphasizes morality, intention, and compassion above all. This means that homosexuality is not seen as an obstacle to enlightenment. A gay monk can meditate, practice compassion, and seek nirvana just as deeply as anyone else. The central question is not about gender or sexual orientation, but about the quality of your heart. In this sense, tolerance is not just encouraged, it is a spiritual necessity. To judge others harshly is to burden your own soul with attachment and ignorance. To accept and show compassion is to move closer to wisdom and liberation. Let's pause again for a practical reflection. Think of a time when you felt judged or when you judged someone else. Can you feel the difference between that heavy energy of judgment and the lightness of compassion? That shift is not only psychological, it is deeply spiritual. For both paganism and Buddhism, compassion is the path that brings us closer to the divine, or in Buddhism's case, to awakening. So, what does this mean for us today? It means that, across the spectrum of religious traditions, love is understood in radically different ways. Where some see it as sin, others see it as sacred. Where some impose rules, others celebrate freedom. Paganism and Buddhism remind us that love beyond gender is not a curse, but a blessing. And yet, our journey is not finished. Because the ultimate question remains, what does all this mean for your soul, your destiny, and your personal truth? In the next and final chapter, we will bring together the visions of the Bible, the Qur'an, paganism, and Buddhism. We'll compare them side by side and ask, which voice speaks to your conscience? Which path leads you to the destiny your soul longs for? If the idea that love has no gender resonates with you, comment love and tolerance so I'll know you are still walking with me on this journey. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Faith Prayer so you won't miss the final and most important part of this investigation. Because discovering how love is seen by religion is only the beginning. The real mystery lies in discovering what it means for you. The judgment of the soul. Which path will your conscience choose? We have now reached the final stage of our journey. We began with the Bible, where homosexuality is described as an abomination and condemned as sin. Then we entered the Qur'an, where the story of Sodom revealed a mystery not just of condemnation, but of mercy and compassion. And finally, we stepped into paganism and Buddhism, where sexuality is not seen as sinful at all, but as a natural and sacred part of life. 3 visions, 3 truths, 3 possible destinies for the human soul. But which one is true? As a seeker of sacred mysteries, my role is not to hand you the answer. My role is to give you the tools to look deeper, to question, and ultimately to discover the truth within your own soul. The first step is simple yet profound: to listen to the voice of your conscience. Let's revisit what we've uncovered. The Bible gives us a vision of love bound by rules, hierarchies, and divine law. It teaches that sexuality must conform to a specific pattern: male and female, husband and wife. This narrative has tremendous power. It brings order, direction, and a sense of divine structure, but it also brings a heavy burden: guilt, shame, and the fear of eternal condemnation. For many, this vision gives clarity. For others, it imprisons the soul. The Qur'an, by contrast, tells the story of Sodom not only as a warning about sexuality, but as a warning about violence, arrogance, and the rejection of mercy. For many Islamic scholars, the real sin of Sodom was not love between 2 people, it was the abuse of power and the absence of compassion. In this vision, Allah is both just and merciful, inviting us into a journey of responsibility, to judge less, to show compassion more, and to live with humility before God. And then there are the paths of paganism and Buddhism, which take us to an entirely different horizon. Pagan spirituality teaches that love itself, whatever form it takes, is divine energy, an expression of creation to be celebrated. Buddhism reminds us that sexuality is not the point at all. The real question is intention. Are we cultivating compassion or feeding selfish desire? Are we easing suffering or creating more of it? In both these paths, tolerance is not optional, it is central. Love is not bound by gender, but freed by compassion. Now, let's pause for the most important practical reflection of all. Close your eyes. Think about your own life. Which of these narratives speaks to you most deeply? Is it the vision of judgment, where love is confined to divine law? Is it the path of mercy, where compassion is the key to God's heart? Or is it the celebration of diversity, where love itself is divine energy beyond rules and boundaries? There is no single right answer. There is only the truth that resonates in your conscience. Maybe you feel torn between these visions. Maybe you feel called to a new path entirely. But the deepest mystery is this: perhaps the real condemnation is not what comes from outside, but what your own conscience speaks to you within. If this reflection touched you, I invite you to comment my truth below, so I'll know you've journeyed with me all the way to the end. Like this video if you are ready to keep uncovering the mysteries of your own soul. And subscribe to Faith Prayer, so you won't miss the next investigations that challenge what you thought you knew about faith, love, and destiny. Because at the end of all sacred mysteries, the question is not only what the Bible, the Qur'an, or ancient traditions say, it is what you believe, and which destiny your conscience chooses for your soul.